CPO of Aetna, Joe Black. Joe, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Dawn. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I wanted to just chat with you about the Office of the CPO. Since the economic fallout, how has life changed for you?
Well, it's been sort of interesting. I won't say that we've experienced what I would call a massive change because of the economic fallout. What's really been our biggest driver has been what's happening on the federal level with the changes in the legislation for healthcare reform. But I think the bottom line is that there's just a lot more focus on not only what Aetna does internally, but how we're using suppliers, subcontractors, vendors to deliver our services, and to the degree that we have a rigorous process around those suppliers, as well as the best price points possible. I mean, that's just been accentuated because of the economic fallout, coupled with the desire to really depress the cost of healthcare in America. So it's been actually quite dramatic in terms of our focus. We have a major initiative underway now, a 3-year initiative of which we're in our very first year of, that we started in 2010 to try to depress close to $1 billion out of our SG&A. Wow. And procurement is playing a significant role in trying to help that along. So it's a 3-year plan with some pretty aggressive targets that requires a tremendous amount of coordination between procurement and all of our internal business stakeholders. So it's quite an exciting time.
$1 billion, you say?
$1 billion.
Wow, that's amazing. So because of this $1 billion goal that you're after, do you think that's gained more credibility for procurement in the boardroom?
Yeah, well, I think what it has done is that it has accentuated the fact that to achieve these type of savings, it can't be done in a vacuum. It takes a strong partnership of really many individuals within the organization, procurement being one, our business clients, HR, finance. It's really a combination of groups. I think where procurement comes into play most strongly is we become the orchestrators of those initiatives. So putting together our people and our time and our assets and our process to help provide the framework to most credibly and swiftly identify new opportunities, set up projects to vet those opportunities out, as well as driving through to conclusion so that those savings can be realized, is really where we come into play. Procurement in and of itself doesn't have a huge budget. My budget is less than 0.1% of Aetna's controllable spend, but of course we touch all of the areas where the major spending is being done. And I think that's really where we become a little bit more top of mind. How are we going to get there? How it's going to be coordinated across the enterprise, and that's where procurement tends to shine.
So you're very well known as a CPO, and the conversations that I'm hearing these days, which we never heard before, were about innovation. So how do you see innovation and procurement? That's not two words that usually go together. How do you see those coming together?
That's a loaded question. Really from a perspective of innovation, I think what you find in procurement is a couple things. One is we're finding that by taking another look at our suppliers, and I know at Aetna we have something called the Aetna Values, which drives the way we operate internally. And when I first assumed the role of CPO, I began to ask some of our suppliers who, if they were aware of these values, and many of them were not. And so I began to take those values to those suppliers, and I guess what we're finding as the innovative practice at Aetna is really embracing our suppliers as extensions of our organization, not just as adjunct groups that are helping us achieve goals, but really a part of the Aetna brand. And I think it's in that process where we begin to build relationships with them to where the innovation that they see day in and day out, that they bring that to Aetna. And are we positioned as a company to where when they come up with innovative ideas that we're positioned to really receive that? And I think from your years in this industry, it evolved not from a perspective of treating a supplier as a partner. It was like beat them up as bad as you can beat them up and bleed every dollar out of them. And although there are parts of that that still exist, you want the best price you can get. The key is that to really get the innovation that's desired, you have to build a different type of relationship with your key suppliers. So I see innovation coming from that perspective. The other area where I say there's some innovative practices coming through procurement is that we're finding that some of our businesses who have operated in a certain method for years, who maybe haven't necessarily had an impetus for change, as they begin to realize they need to do something different and they don't know what that something is, Because we as an organization have been changing over the years to be more consultative versus just executors of initiatives, that oftentimes they can bring us in and begin to brainstorm with us around their business. Now, I may not be deeply rooted in claims adjudication, but by listening to what the needs of the businesses are, because of the other experiences I have, the question is, how can I bring all of those experiences to bear and help develop new ways of looking at how we maybe process our claims? That's just one small example of where I think we, from a procurement perspective, can help push the innovation envelope.
So in the next 3 to 5 years, what kind of innovations do you think, is it going to be from technology that's going to innovate procurement, or where do you think new innovations are going to come in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, if we focus, if the focus, Dawn, is really on procurement itself as a discipline, I probably would say that our innovation, I don't think it's going to be technology. The technology has been out there for a while. There'll be some things here and there that help us do what we do better. I think one area is supply relationship management. There's a tremendous amount of energy around that and a need to automate that process, especially as we start to dig deeper into the supply chain relative to making sure that, again, their processes and procedures marry ours so we protect our brand. I really do think that from an innovative perspective, it may be some pieces of procurement outsourcing. Now, we've heard about that for a long time, and it hasn't really taken, and I think a big part of that has to do with the nature of what we do. And, you know, I had an old boss who used to say, rather fight a war with soldiers than missionaries, right? And so there's a reluctance sometimes to bring missionaries into some parts of the organization versus having your own soldiers. But I do think that as there's constant deflation or pressures on all organizations, that's going to open the door for some practices on the procurement outsourcing side. Again, I don't see it in big key areas, but I do see that as something that will be a little different, you know, 3 to 5 years from now.
Now, do you think in 3 to 5 years you'll be more involved in the outsourcing initiatives than you are today that take place within Aetna?
Yes, definitively. I mean, we've seen that.
I like that strong yes. I like that.
Well, we've been working on it.
Good.
So when you talk about, and you know, I hadn't even thought about this when you mentioned innovative practices, because I don't particularly see anything that I do as innovative. I really don't. It's just, you know, work hard, figure out easy ways to get things done. And so I've started executive briefings that I hold with all of our key executives. I review their spend profile, I talk about different metrics, I talk about their objectives for the year, I talk about what we're doing, what's driving procurement, what's driving the company, and look for ways of marrying those two, you know, their business drivers along with what we know the enterprise is looking for in terms of value. And I think it's through the intersection of those two things that we begin to learn more about what's happening and then are brought in earlier into the stream of things because of that. One area that's really helping us from that perspective, quite frankly, is the fact that we recognize that there's a lot of suppliers that we use that touch Aetna confidential information. Now, that could be information about our members, that could be information about our employees. And any time that information goes to someone else, it's really important that we understand how well they're managing that and handling that. And we're the group that's best positioned to make sure that no supplier we work with, do we ever work with, that doesn't have an ironclad process for handling information that we supply them with. Now, the businesses may be focused on what they need to get done, and so that's what's driving them. My focus is not only on the underlying service, but all of the other risk profiles and the risk factors that's around that. And I think that's what's helping to also push procurement to the table sooner. Our board of directors and our CEO, who's CEO and president, have both made it pretty clear that they don't want any relationship engaged that doesn't first touch procurement.
Oh my goodness.
That's wonderful.
That's wonderful. Now that says a lot for what you've done.
Executing on it's a whole other story, but it is wonderful.
So why, when I talk to so many different procurement organizations, why don't they all have that focus on knowing their business units that way? You know, that's such a critical piece. You can't deliver value if you don't know what they're striving for.
It's hard, Dawn. I mean, when you really break it down, and there are, quite frankly, a lot of other CPOs that I think are just, you know, they're just outstanding, and I'm just a little guy trying to make it work. But it's complicated. I mean, when you think about it, we need to understand our businesses from stem to stern. And not only do we need to understand it, we need to understand the intersection of the business to procurement processes and practices. And then we have to understand, how do I drive value out of that? Right. That's not an easy equation. And I can tell you, there were times when I first started in my role as CPO, there's some areas I didn't even want to touch because I didn't want to go in and not be able to bring that value instantaneously, because you only get one shot at this. You don't get multiple shots.
No, you don't. You make one mistake, you're gone for a long time.
So you got to hit it right. It's got to be tight when you do it. And so I think that that may be part of the dilemma. Am I equipped internally to be able to drive that value every time I touch a customer, especially when I start talking about influencing their strategy or being more early involved in their whole process of executing on their strategies.
So marketing and legal, can you touch those categories?
Marketing, yes. Legal, no. Okay. So marketing, we've had a long-standing relationship with, and we have a very, very tight relationship with. Legal, just before I joined the organization, we did a focused initiative with another outside consultant to look at the legal spend, rationalized it down. We had something like 30 different, legal firms we were using to help drive our strategies, and then went down to like 10 or 15. But they are extremely protective of what they do. Of course, they're lawyers, and lawyers can do what everybody else can do, but better, right? So, no, that's no slam to any lawyer.
No,
so.
I know.
But the reality of the matter is that they're very difficult to penetrate. But I do have a very great relationship with our chief counsel, good enough to where even recently, I'm talking about within the last month, I met someone who has capabilities in the legal spend management area. And I went to him, part of my executive briefing, and said, look, I know you guys are working hard at doing what you do. Again, my job isn't to impugn what they're doing. But I have a resource that you may find of value if you're looking to really rationalize your spend a little bit better. And so we've worked together. I've worked through his chief of staff, and I've now introduced that party to them. So my view is that I don't have to be in your face, and I don't have to be in every initiative to influence the outcome. And that's really what I'm focused on. How do I influence the outcome, the ultimate outcome for Aetna? And through this process, procurement probably won't be involved. We might be involved depending on what happens. But now I have introduced someone who may be of value to the legal department. So that's, with groups like that, I don't try to take out my sword and whack away at them. I'd rather work alongside of them, and I'll take whatever they give me. Once they give it to me, I'll drive it.
For the fact you have marketing alone, could I invite you back and for another interview series? I'd love to just talk about marketing.
Sure.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, no problem.
So Joe, I want to just wrap up and tell you thank you for your time today, and thank you for your insights. Well, we always love tracking what you're doing in the industry. You are an industry leader, and we're very respected, so as much as you want to be humble. And so with that, thank you for joining us today. I'm Dawn Evans, and I'll see you next time.